Level 1, the cabin steward.
You answer an ad in a newspaper. The company logo is blue and gold, printed on glossy paper. The recruiter across the desk tells you the ships are the size of small cities. You nod like you understand.
You don't.
You're 21, from a landlocked town, and the largest body of water you've ever seen is a reservoir 2 miles from your mother's house. You fly to Miami for orientation. They give you a name badge, a Navy uniform that fits only approximately, and a laminated handbook with 140 pages of service standards. The trainer speaks with practiced calm. She tells you that every guest is the most important person on this ship. She tells you this for 8 hours across 2 days. You start to believe her. Then you board for the first time. The ship is not a ship the way you imagined a ship. It is a floating building, 18 decks, 4,000 guests, 1,500 crew, so large that its corridors have street names on placards bolted to the walls. You are assigned to Deck 7, a corridor of 48 cabins. These 48 cabins are your world for the next 8 months. Your shift begins at 6 a.m. You turn down beds, replenish toiletries, fold towel animals that take 6 minutes to build and 4 seconds to destroy. You knock on 48 doors with fresh linens. You smile 200 times a day with your full face, the way the handbook specifies. It calls this a genuine smile. You practice it in the mirror above your bunk until it no longer feels like anything at all. Your cabin is below the waterline. You share it with another steward from the Philippines who has been doing this for 9 years. He shows you how to move through guest corridors without being seen by people who don't want to see you. There is a specific art to becoming invisible while carrying a mop. He teaches you this without irony. You don't sleep well for the first 2 months. The motion of the ship is constant, a low deliberate rolling.
It never stops.
You learn to sleep through it the same way you learn everything else on the ship, by doing it badly until you do it adequately.
Level 2, the senior cabin steward. 3 years in.
Your uniform has 1 additional stripe on the sleeve. You now supervise 4 junior stewards. You know every recurring guest preference logged in the system for your section. Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove in 7116 require the thermostat at exactly 68 degrees and a specific brand of still water on the left side of the vanity. You know this without checking. You train new stewards the way you were trained, mostly by watching them fail and then explaining what went wrong with specificity.
You are 24.
The junior stewards call you senior, as if that is your name. After a while, it more or less is. You notice things you didn't notice as a junior. The guests are not one thing. Some are celebrating milestones, anniversaries, retirements, the particular relief of a medical report that came back clean. Some are escaping something back on land that they will have to return to. They carry it in a specific way that shows up in how they talk to you, too formally, or not at all, or with a strange urgency, as though you are the only person on the ship who has time for them. You learn to read which category a guest falls into before they say a word. The sea is never the same twice. This surprises you every time. The Atlantic off Bermuda is green and opaque in the morning and a different color entirely by noon. The Caribbean is the blue from postcards, except when a storm is building on the horizon. Then it goes flat and gray, and the air pressure changes in a way you feel in your sinuses before you see it in the sky. You re-sign your contract for the 3rd time. You call your mother from a port in Nassau. She asks when you're coming home.
You tell her soon.
Level 3, the food and beverage supervisor. You transfer departments. 2 years in food and beverage management after completing the company's internal certification program. You oversee a dining venue with 320 covers per service and manage a team of 22 servers, 2 sommeliers, and a maitre d' who has been on ships longer than you have been alive. Service on a vessel moving through open ocean is a problem that people who have never done it don't think about. Plated dishes have to be designed for stability. Serving staff walk at a particular angle on heavy weather days, weight forward, trays held flat and low. You've watched experienced servers carry 4 full plates through a 12-degree roll without losing a drop of sauce. It takes 2 years to develop the muscle memory. You now eat in the crew mess 3 times a day, surrounded by 200 people from 47 different countries. The crew mess is its own civilization, with its own social rules, its own hierarchies, its own running conversations that have been going on for years in a rotating cast of participants. You figured out within the first week that the crew is a more interesting collection of human beings than most of the guests they serve, and nothing since has changed your mind. You deal with complaints every service. Steak undercooked. Steak overcooked.
Wrong entree.
Correct entree, but the guest has reconsidered. You handle each one with the same composure. Your face gives nothing away. Your face is a professional instrument. One evening a family in your section, A father, a mother, 2 daughters under 10, finishes dinner and the father catches your eye on the way out. He says quietly that his wife's birthday dinner was the best meal she'd had in years. He says it like he means it. You thank him and move on to the next table. You think about it for the rest of the shift. Level 4, the cruise director's assistant. You moved into guest experience operations. Different uniform, different floor, different set of problems. The cruise director manages everything outside of dining and navigation, shore excursions, onboard activities, special events, the daily printed schedule that every guest reads and most guests ignore until they've missed something they wanted.
You assist him.
That means you manage the things he doesn't have time to manage, which is most things. You are responsible for keeping 4,000 people purposefully occupied across a 7-day sailing.
The ship does not stop. The guests do not stop.
There are no days off during a voyage. You plan, adjust, and replan based on weather changes, port delays, guest complaints about scheduling conflicts, and the low-grade chaos that emerges whenever 4,000 people are in an enclosed space for a week with nowhere they have to be. The ship crosses the Atlantic on a transatlantic repositioning voyage.
14 days at sea, no ports.
You plan 14 days of programming for guests whose ages range from 8 to 87 and whose interests cover the full spectrum of human variation. You don't sleep more than 5 hours a night for the entire crossing. You stand at the stern one evening during a brief window between events. The wake stretches back for miles, a white line on a black sea. Overhead the sky is dense with stars. No city light for 1,000 miles in any direction. You stand there for 4 minutes before your radio crackles and someone needs you somewhere. Level 5. The cruise director. You are 32. You got the posting after 2 years as assistant director on a smaller vessel. Your name is in the daily program now, printed in a font slightly larger than anyone else on your team. You are the public face of the ship's guest experience. Guests know your face. They recognize you in corridors and stop you to tell you things about their day, their cabin, their neighbors, their expectations. You listen to all of it. You respond to all of it.
This is the job.
Behind the public face is a different job entirely. You manage a department of 34 people, budget approvals, scheduling conflicts, personnel reviews, the quiet management of a team member who is burning out after 11 straight months at sea. You handle the last one carefully because you've seen what happens when it isn't handled. You've seen crew members deteriorate slowly and then abruptly, and the abrupt part is always worse for everyone. A tropical storm forces a port cancellation in Cozumel. You have 8 hours to redesign a full day's programming from scratch. You do it, and the guests barely notice anything changed. When the work is that invisible, you've done it right. You call your father from Lisbon during a port day. He asks if you ever plan to settle somewhere. You tell him the ship is somewhere. He goes quiet for a moment, then says he understands. You don't think he does. You're not sure you do either. Level 6, the hotel director. The hotel director runs everything guests touch that isn't the engine or the bridge. Cabins, dining, housekeeping, guest services, spa, retail, entertainment coordination. A staff of 900 people. A floating hotel with a $180 million annual operational budget. You are 39. Your shoulders carry a weight that isn't physical. You make decisions daily that affect the employment of people who have mortgages, families, children in schools they're paying for from their ship wages. You are aware of this in every performance review and every disciplinary conversation. A norovirus outbreak begins on day 3 of a Mediterranean sailing. 60 guests, then 90. You activate the outbreak protocol, deep cleaning of all public surfaces every 90 minutes, modified dining service, enhanced hand hygiene enforcement at every venue entrance. You coordinate with the ship's medical center and the company's shore-based operations center simultaneously. You communicate with port health authorities in 3 countries. You contain the outbreak by day 5. 110 guests affected out of 3,800. The company considers this a successful containment. You write the incident report and file it with the flag state authority. Then you start preparing the next sailing. A crew member from your housekeeping team loses her father back home in Indonesia. She comes to you because she doesn't know where else to go. You arrange emergency leave, coordinate her travel from a port in Barcelona, advance 2 weeks of her wages, and make sure her section is covered before she goes. She thanks you. You tell her to travel safely and come back when she's ready. She is back in 5 weeks. She works harder than before. You note this and say nothing about it. Level 7, the captain. They give you the 4 gold stripes at a private ceremony in the company's Miami headquarters.
The CEO shakes your hand.
The head of fleet operations tells you that you now command the largest mobile structure most people will ever stand on. You know this. You've been on ships for 22 years.
The bridge is yours.
Every decision that involves the movement, safety, and structural integrity of a vessel carrying 6,000 people flows through you. You stand your morning watch with the same attention you brought to your first watch as a junior officer 2 decades ago. The sea has not become routine. It has become legible, which is different and more dangerous to confuse. You navigate a severe weather system in the North Atlantic. The forecasts gave you a window. The window closes faster than modeled. You alter course by 40 miles and reduce speed to 14 knots. The crossing is rough. Guests are uncomfortable. 2 are treated for minor injuries from falls. You file the deviation report and the incident reports and stand on the bridge for 31 consecutive hours. When you finally leave, you eat something cold from the officer's mess and sleep for 4 hours and return. The ship arrives in Southampton 2 hours behind schedule. No one is seriously hurt.
The ship is intact.
Those are the metrics that matter. A 9-year-old girl asks to see the bridge during a port day open tour. Her father is beside her. She stands at the center console and looks out at the harbor with an expression of absolute seriousness. She asks you what the hardest part of the job is. You tell her it's making good decisions when you're tired. She nods slowly, as if filing this away. You think of yourself at that age. You wonder what she will do with it. You have been married for 14 years. Your husband runs a small architecture firm in Lisbon. You are home for roughly 90 days each year. The 2 of you have developed a specific grammar for short reunions and long absences, a way of being together that doesn't require continuous presence to function.
It works. It costs something.
You've both agreed the cost is acceptable. You revisit this agreement silently every time you leave.
Level 8, the fleet captain. Shoreside now.
An office in the Miami headquarters, 11th floor, windows facing the port where your ships dock and depart. You watch them from your desk. You know every vessel in this fleet by structural specification and operational character. You oversee 14 captains. You are responsible for fleet-wide safety compliance, navigational standards, master mariner certification requirements, and incident response at the command level. When something goes wrong on any of these ships, you are the first call the company makes. A vessel runs aground on a sandbar off a Bahamas port. No casualties, moderate hull damage. You are on a charter flight to Nassau within 3 hours of the first report. You spend 6 days coordinating the salvage operation, the flag state investigation, the company's internal review, and the logistics of relocating 3,400 guests who need to be flown home from Nassau. You give testimony to the Bahamian Maritime Authority. You give a separate statement to the company's insurance underwriters. You write the executive summary yourself, because no summary written by someone who wasn't there will capture what actually happened. The grounding came from an outdated chart overlay combined with an inadequate pre-arrival briefing. You change the pre-arrival protocol for every ship in the fleet. You retrain every officer on chart verification. The change costs $2.3 million in training hours across the fleet. You sign off without hesitation. Some evenings you walk through the port before driving home. The ships are loading provisions for the next sailing, pallets of food, crates of linens, replacement parts for equipment that failed mid-voyage. The logistics of a single sailing are staggering when you see them laid out on a pier. It all functions invisibly when it works, and nobody thinks about it. That, you have come to understand, is the point. Level 9, the Chief Executive Officer. You took the post at 54. The board selected you from inside the company after 30 years of working every level of this industry. You understand the ships in a way that people who came up through finance do not. This is both your greatest asset and the source of your most persistent friction with the board. You run a company with 28 vessels, 42,000 employees, 1.8 million annual guests, and operations across 6 ocean regions. Every strategic decision reaches the board with your name on it: fleet expansion, route development, labor agreements, environmental compliance, crisis communication. A ship in your fleet becomes the subject of a public health investigation after an outbreak that your team handled correctly and reported within the required timeframe. The press coverage does not reflect the quality of the response.
You issue a public statement. You brief the board.
You review the incident and find no procedural failure. You say so publicly with evidence, without defensiveness. The story runs for 10 days and then moves on. You note the pattern, that the story always moves on, and you note that the guests who were affected do not move on at the same pace. You direct your guest relations team to stay in contact with every affected guest for 90 days. You fly to a naming ceremony for a new vessel in Hamburg. $300 million of new construction. You stand on the bridge with the ship's captain, a woman you promoted to command 4 years ago. She runs her hand across the console with an expression you recognize. You felt it the first time you stood on a bridge of your own.
You don't say anything.
Some things don't need to be said.
Level 10, the end of the last watch.
You retired last spring. The ceremony was small, a dinner in a private room at the Miami headquarters. People you'd worked with for 30 years sat around a long table and said accurate things about your career. Your husband gave a short speech that was funnier than anything anyone else said. You thanked everyone briefly and sat down.
You moved to a house in the Algarve.
It has a terrace that faces west. You sit there in the evenings and watch the Atlantic. You can see it from your chair, a thin strip of dark water at the edge of the horizon, constant and indifferent and unchanged by anything that has happened on it. Your hands are steadier than they were in the last 2 years of the job. The specific tension of command, the continuous background awareness of 6,000 people depending on decisions you haven't made yet, has slowly released. Your body is reminding you it was carrying it. You get occasional calls from former crew members. A steward you trained in 2011 is now a department head on a vessel in the Pacific. A junior officer you mentored is sitting for her Master Mariner examination next month. They call to report, to ask a question, or sometimes just to talk. You take every call. You owe them that much. You keep a crew photograph from your last voyage in a frame on the bookshelf. 1,400 people. You know perhaps 200 of their names. Every face represents a specific human situation, someone far from home, someone sending money to a family they see twice a year, someone doing work that is invisible to the people it serves. You look at it when you need to remember what the industry actually is, beneath the itineraries and the revenue figures. Somewhere right now, a 21-year-old is reading a job posting. The photos show sunlit decks and turquoise water. The posting describes an exciting opportunity to see the world. The candidate does not know that the world they will see is mostly corridors below the waterline, the backs of guests who don't look at them, and a narrow bunk with a porthole that shows nothing but the hull of the berth next to theirs. They will sign the contract anyway. They will board a ship and feel something shift in their chest the first time the dock disappears behind them. They will spend years learning to disappear in service of someone else's experience. They will become, over time, something more capable and more worn than they expected. And if they stay long enough, they will sit somewhere quiet one day with the water visible in the distance, and they will try to total the years and the sailings and the miles, and the number will be too large to hold.
The ships will keep moving.
The sea will remain exactly what it has always been. The cycle will continue without them, as it did before them, as it will long after.